And we are back with another episode, Real Talk with JT. And guys, for this one, myself, I'm super excited because I'm going to have Steve Valentine over here from Phoenix, Arizona. And not only he's a super cool guy, good dude all overall, but he sells 100 homes a year. Really interesting team the way he runs the things, okay? And he also gonna buy 50 investment properties in 1 year. Absolute animal, Steve. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to me. I appreciate you for taking the
Thanks
time.
for the introduction, JT. I appreciate that.
So let's jump into it, man. So bring us back. Like how did you get into real estate? What was the story, man?
Well, I'm third generation. So my grandmother was a real estate broker in Illinois. My parents
Nice.
were both real estate brokers. And then I wanted to work on cars, which I tried for a small stint when I was in my young 20s and ended up not working out the way I wanted it to. So I went to work for my dad. And that was where it started. And then the investing game started later on when I lost my dad about 7, 8 years ago and saw what he had done for a lot of investors and chose to start to do it for myself.
So good. And so sorry to hear about your dad. And so I know you still have the cars, right? The big trucks with the big wheels and stuff. So you kind
Yes.
of still
Yes.
still doing it now. So
Yes.
that's
We have
awesome.
12 cars. We have 12 cars at home.
Wow. Only 12? How big of a
Only
garage do
12.
you have?
I don't. We have a lot of RV parking space.
Wow. And so, when you went and worked with your dad, have you done sales or property management? What specifically have you done for your dad?
When I went to work for my dad, it was really interesting the way I got started. Unlike most real estate agents, they go join a team and different splits and different things. And my dad actually put me on a $500 a week salary, and he reimbursed me for gas money. And I basically was like today's version of a showing agent. So
Mhm.
I would go show houses, and when they decided they wanted to write a contract, my dad would meet me at Starbucks, and I would watch him present and write the contract. And so for the first 2 years of my career, my dad didn't allow me to receive any commissions
Nice.
because he wanted me to be hungry and he didn't want me to experience the
Mm.
roller coaster.
Yeah.
And I
Tough
was being
love.
trained by one of the best in the business. My parents were number two internationally for realty executives for a long time. Their highest year was like 800 transactions in '05.
Crazy.
So I learned and soaked it up, and because I didn't know how much money could be made, I didn't realize it, for that first couple of years. And there were times that were hard with my parents because they were kind of holding me down from making more money, but my dad was one of those people. He grew up poor, and he was never going to feed me with a silver spoon. And so what I had to do was work, and I had to work for what I wanted in every aspect. I mean, all the way from when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny you saying it. I grew up with similar setting actually. My dad was a property manager too, hardworking guy, and he would make us earn every single
Yep.
thing. And I think those are the lessons which you need to really learn, right? In order to be
Hmm.
successful and be independent and know, hey, listen, if I want this, I'm gonna have to do something for it, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
by the way, Steve, I used to work with realty executives for a few years as well up here in New York. So
And
I
that's where
love
I
that.
started.
Pretty funny. And so, what did you do before real estate? So I know you did the cars for a little bit.
Yep.
Anything beforehand?
Let's see. My most interesting job when I was a teenager was I used to chase hot air balloons. I was on the ground crew for hot air balloons. And then I got into the automotive field because I enjoyed playing with cars and building trucks in high school. And I decided I
Hmm.
was going to try to make a career out of it. And, rolling around on the hot concrete out here in Phoenix, and somebody stole all my tools one night at the place that I was at. I got an insurance check that was worth about a year of income. And that's when I went back to my dad. I'm like, can I try the real estate thing? So I didn't come from sales.
Hmm.
I didn't have a sales background. And that's where I started, was just learning. But what I learned from my dad was more, not so much on the sales side as it was how to build relationships,
Mhm.
right?
And I mean,
And
that's
what I believe oh,
go
go ahead.
ahead. Go ahead, Stevie.
Well, I just believe that the business is so much of it. We talk about sales. And for me, it's really about building deep relationships with people and figuring out how to solve for whatever the biggest need is. And that's where the success comes from.
Yeah. That's so good. I mean, you can't do it on your own, right? And I mean, there's a saying: if you take care of the people, right, and do what you got to do, eventually down the line they will take care of you, right?
Hmm.
And
Agreed.
it's so
Agreed.
hard for a lot of agents to kind of connect those two, because especially if you're fresh in a business and you don't have savings and you need to make the kill to eat, right?
Yep.
It's very
Yep.
hard to focus on the people when you need to close some transactions as well.
Yes. 100%.
What are some of your suggestions for some of the agents who struggles with that?
The struggles with the sales part of it.
Yeah, to make it really about them and really focus and do the right thing rather than focusing on the sell, and sometimes to don't do the right thing by the people.
Well, there's one saying that we live and die by in our company, which is people over profit. And we always do the right thing. And some of that comes from the construction business that my wife runs, is that, when we flip homes, we will not cut corners at people's expense, knowing that, some family is excited to have a new home and then finds out 6 months later the sewer's trashed on it. And now it's
Hmm.
their expense, but we made money. So, and same thing in the sales side. There's a lot of times that I talk people out of selling their home because they should be keeping it as an investment, and they should be looking at their long-term plan and strategy, and this is how we're going to get you to retirement. And so I will sacrifice making a commission, and it's always something I try to talk to them about when I'm there. But as agents, we need to have more of an education on finances and money and how it works and the strategies behind it, which is really what I'm my goal is, for the agent industry, is to change their mindset around it and understand the opportunities that are there to help lead and guide people to their best life down the road.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier, right? Only you said only 5% of agents actually owns a real estate investments, which is
Hmm.
just kind of scary because we don't have really a retirement plan. I mean, within real we do have the
Right.
shares and stock options,
Yep.
thanks God, but most of the agents out there, they don't have really anything. So God forbids, if something will happen to them, what are they gonna do? Like how
Right.
their family is going to survive, especially if they are the main breadwinner for the family, right?
Yeah. So, here's the regret in my career, is that I got a little taste of it from my dad early on the investment side, because he worked
Hmm.
with investors, but he was always working for the investors. He was never doing it for himself. So he was always chasing the commission dollar,
I
although he
see.
was a genius behind it. But that was really what changed my trajectory, my career, and the trajectory to have as much impact on the real estate industry as possible. Is that my dad was in the business for 40 years.
Four
He
four
bought a
zero 40
40.
40.
Yep.
Wow, all
He
life.
bought 1,000 homes at trustee sale during the foreclosure crisis for investors.
Hmm.
My dad died at age 63 owning no real estate. How is that possible? So that was my trajectory going, okay, this is one saying that, to be really clear on, which is something that you should ingrain in your brain. A lot of investors out there want real estate agents to work their asses off, bring them deals, and make them money while they live on breadcrumbs. And that's what my dad did. So I came away when my dad passed away, because one of his biggest investors was the biggest a-hole on the face of the earth. My dad made him hundreds of millions of dollars while working for pennies on the dollar. So my thing now is that I will work with you. I will not work for you. We will both make money. We will both build wealth, but I am not working for you. This is a joint venture, and I'm not your chihuahua. And it's really important to have that clarity, not from an ego standpoint, but from a self-worth standpoint.
Yeah.
Because I have seen it in my career where the investors, they dig into you and they want you to work and grind, and there's no reward for you at the end of it, when you could be doing the same grind for yourself and for your future. How long you been in the business, JT?
20 years. Actually, I just hit
Okay,
19 years this past April, so it's my 20th year.
congrats. So in 19 years, I know that you're doing some investments and you've done
Yeah.
well with them. And we think about anybody that's starting their career right now. If they started out with a mindset and a goal, and I would encourage you, JT, on your side with your team, is like, one of the things we need to teach new agents is, hey, part of the reason you're here is that the opportunity lies in your real estate license to create wealth and create generational wealth through what we do, because you're really good at what you do because you know the real estate market, which means you should be able to see opportunities and you should be on the trajectory to go, okay, in my career, I'm starting now at age 25. I want to own 10 homes free and clear by the time I'm 55. So I'm not doing open houses and I'm not doing these things. I can choose to work at that time. It doesn't take any extra effort to build that during your career. It takes strategy to do it. And you have to understand, again, back to the finances and how money works. But it's absolutely possible. And so many agents that I've interviewed and talked to, their regrets are, I wished I would have. I wished I would have kept my first home. I wished I would have bought that listing. I wished I would have, but I didn't know how. And that's the thing that lacks in our industry, is showing the how. The myths are terrible, that I can't afford it. I don't have the down payment. I can't do these things. And the reality is, and I talk about it in my new book called Limitless Real Estate Strategies, there are so many myths that can be broken instantly if you just learn to have the conversations and have the mindset, right? And I remember one of my investor friends in 2006, he challenged me when we started looking at rental properties. This was a guy that was overseeing a $100 million budget at HP, and he was starting to get into the investing and raising capital. And he said, before I go any further with you, I need you to read the book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And so we read that together for months, and it changed my mindset. Like, wait, there are other things that are possible in my career and in this space if I would change my mindset from a transactional gross commission income mindset to there's also net worth that should be added to my annual goals.
Yeah. It's so great. And Steve, what is the name of the book?
It's called Limitless Real Estate Strategies. And
Limitless
it
Real Estate Strategies. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look it up.
and
Is
it
it the,
debuts. It's released June 13th, which was a special date for me because it's actually my dad's birthday. So I decided in honor of him that I would release it on his birthday. And it's a short 165 pages, but it is jam packed with my story. And I didn't really share this, but in the book it talks about we were in the market and it crashed. And so in 2008, I lost my house to foreclosure. I had no money. My wife was waiting tables. I was barely surviving, fairly close to committing suicide because I was such a failure at the time. And we went through the opportunities and started figuring out how to be more creative and how to get through things. And so, 2008 came along. We did get through it. In 2012, we were blessed to have the opportunity of doing foreclosures. And we paid more than $1 million in debt off in 4 years. We were able to buy a home again. And then we started our trajectory on the investment side. And so we still do traditional real estate. My wife runs our construction company, and she's amazing at what she does, which takes that burden off of me when we buy flips. And in 7 years, it started with one Zillow lead that I, swallowed my pride and decided to ask the guy to buy the house rather than to sell the house. And that one question, he said yes, which I was shocked, and I didn't have any money. And then I asked another question, which I had to swallow really hard. And I went to my mentor. I'm like, hey, will you loan me $110,000 to buy this house? And those were two questions that I somebody could have said no to, but both people said yes. And we still own that house today. It's worth quadruple what we paid for it. It's still a rental. And we just continued to do that over and over again to where we're at now.
That's pretty incredible. And I think the biggest reasons for a lot of people, Steve, it's like, I don't have the money, that's why I can't really invest. And you don't really need to have the money, but if you have the
Mhm.
deal, very easily you will find someone with the money to invest with you, right?
Absolutely. It's, Grant Cardone says it, I think, in Be Obsessed or Be Average is say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah, I love
Right.
that
And a
one.
lot of us have a fear of saying yes and figuring it out, going, okay, well, now what do I do with it? Well, if I couldn't have found the money, could I have found a buyer and made some money on that house? Absolutely. Right. Did I solve the problem for the seller? Yep. It was an inheritance. He didn't want anything to do with it. He just wanted his money and be gone. And so as agents, we fear asking those questions. And I'm here to tell you that asking those questions and giving people opportunity to make a choice, you will be amazed at what people are willing to sell their properties for convenience,
Mm,
what they're willing to help with, and the problem that you're actually solving for them if you learn to have those conversations.
wow. So you say yes, and then you figured out how to get the money for the first one.
Yep. I
Pretty
had no idea.
pretty much.
Yep.
So believe it or not, my first few properties actually I bought, Steve. I had no money either. I also said, yeah, I'll figure it out, and then I was like, oh my god, what do I do? My wife was freaking out. She was like, "You freaking nuts! You
Right.
crazy! Like you're gonna screw us up." I was like, "Hey, I gotta figure it out now, right?" And so, I mean, what gives you that drive, right, to take those risks, or to really commit and figure it out later? Like, what gives you that power to do that?
There's two things that are really important here. One was the drive, the work ethic that, my dad instilled in me. If I want to be wealthy and I want to break the generational curse, right? So my dad, he made a ton of money, but he was always broke, right? And my dad never had toys. He never had second homes. He worked like a dog all the time, but there was just something that disconnected on the financial side of things. So I was determined to learn how money moved and breathed, right? How it works, what people are looking for, how to utilize it, how to move it around and get creative, right? The second thing is, what do you want? And are you willing to go after it? And trust me, this has not all been big money making things. I mean, we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in some of our flips and some clients and some different things. So it's not all gravy, it's not all easy, but you continue to learn from it every time. And as long as you continue to evolve, you'll get better at it. But we also did it at a massive scale. I mean, in 2018, I think we had 30 properties under construction, and it was too much, right? Because we were buying anything and everything that we could. So it doesn't have to be something that is, I need to take this massive scale. In fact, I encourage a lot of agents not to flip homes for profit because there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of gamble. I
Yeah.
do encourage them to find properties that they can add value to and keep for long-term rentals, right? So they have to start by understanding, what do I want to invest in and what makes the most sense, right? And that's where we started. I started to create a buy box in the area that I live and said, based on the property management company, what properties are absolutely doing the best? How long do the tenants stay? What do I need to do? How do I cover my long-term liabilities and lessen them? And that's how we created what we kept. And we learned how to add value and buy things below value because it created our down payment from thin air. And there's a whole strategy that I talk about in the book about, buying something below market, adding value to it, using hard money, which, if you don't know what hard money is, it's private capital that's expensive, anywhere from 10% to 14%. But you're using it short term in order to capitalize on, say, 50, 60, $80,000 of equity that is then utilized as the down payment. So you can refinance traditionally out of the hard money, knowing that you created 20% equity, and then you don't have any money into that asset. And that is exactly how we've created the portfolio that we have. I didn't have 20% down to put down on $50 million worth of properties. We created value every time in order to refinance, get out, and have no money into it.
Yeah. And I mean, tell me more about the syndication. So, like, how do you structure the deal with the investors where it's really a win-win for you and them at the same
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. So I always have conversations with typically older people when they have a lot of cash around. Now, we don't syndicate. We have what's called a deed of trust program. So deed of trust, well, there's two things that go to that, right? When you buy a house, there's a note, which is the instructions for the lender. So it's interest rate, term of the loan, when the payments are due. Is it interest only? Is it principal and interest? That's the note. And then you have a deed of trust. The deed of trust is actually the security that is recorded against the property in favor of the lender. So when you start talking to people about buying rental properties, well, people in their 50s and 60s, they're like, I don't want to mess with tenants, repairs, all the other things, but they have cash. So we started asking questions. Well, what if you didn't have to own the property, but you could lend for it for short term and long term? And so we started having conversations with investors. And the more we did it, the more they loved the return. They loved the trust that they built in us. And they started giving us massive credit lines that I can literally send a text message to a client and say, I need $500,000 on Friday for this property. They just send the thumbs up and my team does the paperwork and we account for it and we close on the property and then we figure out what to do with it after that. So there are 5 people in your sphere right now that have $500,000 of liquidity that they have no idea what to do with. They don't want it in the stock market right now. They're a little nervous about it. See, and older people, what they want is they want security, pretty much risk-free, and a guaranteed rate of return because it's creating income for them to live on. And so our investors, they get a guaranteed rate of return somewhere between 6 and 8%, depending on the loan they're doing. And sometimes it's out 6 months, sometimes it's out 3, sometimes it could be out 2 years. They don't care as long as the money is working at that interest rate we agreed upon. And so we just kept rolling their money from one project to the next. And some of them have financed our long-term rentals for us. And so it creates a win-win situation between the investor and ourselves. And that's how we created a lot of liquid capital to do what we do and always be the buyer.
Wow.
Right? Because we talk about that myth of, well, I don't have the money. Well, before you don't have the money, can you see the opportunity? Right? How many of us have gone and like looked at MLS like, oh my God, look at this fix and flip. It would be amazing. And then they drop it because the myth is I don't have the money, but they don't practice and go, okay, well, I'm going to go try to get it under contract and I'm going to do my numbers. And then I'm going to have a conversation with somebody in my sphere that I know. And the reason I say that there's 5 people that you don't know or that has that liquidity. There's another great book called The Millionaire Next Door, right? So my first private investor that funded that, he actually, like I asked him for the money and then I asked him for more money. And before I knew it, he had lent me like $4 million in real estate loans.
Wow.
I had no idea he had that much liquidity and he's got a lot more than that. And then some of my other investors, same thing. So it's shifting the conversation and showing the clients a benefit of them investing because they already know you, love you, trust you. So why wouldn't they lend money guaranteed by real estate in something that you're good at? You're not asking to borrow money so you can go invest in some crazy scheme. You're borrowing money in something that you do every day. And it makes people more comfortable in that aspect.
Yeah. I mean, some agents might say, well, Steve, it's easy for you to say because you got 50 million, in properties already and you buying and selling 50 homes this year only. But if I'm doing the first one, it's going to be very hard to have that kind of trust with some of the people.
Well, you build trust by by understanding the market first so that you can have a good conversation, right? So my very first conversation was this. That house that I bought from the Zillow lead, it was 110,000. Actually, I think I paid 102 for it. The house is worth about 160,000. So when I went to the private money investor, the friend of mine, and asked him to loan me 110,000, I showed him the property. I showed him the value, what it could sell for, in order for him to feel secure in the investment he was doing. And it was a personal relationship. And so, you have people that you have personal relationships that would be willing to talk to you about it because they're not being guided by anybody else. Nobody else is talking to them about, well, what's your investment? They're watching CNN and MSNBC and whatever else that they're, TikTok, right? And that's where they're putting things. But why wouldn't they invest in you if they know you, trust you, love you, and they believe that you're good in your space? And it doesn't always have to come from the private side of things. Here's the other great thing. Some of you that are new are like, well, yeah, the investment properties, the money down. Well, then we start by owner occupant house hacking, right? Don't go buy a house just to buy a house. You're buying your first investment property that you plan on keeping forever. And you go find something a little bit below market. Maybe it just needs some paint and carpet. And you go and you buy that, and you buy it below market. You put a little elbow grease in it, and then you go and refinance it. And you keep it for long-term owner occupant, and then you do that again in 18 months. And you just do that over and over again until you do create or have the conversations and you have an arsenal of funds that you can deploy. And not everybody needs an arsenal. You need a couple of people that are willing to back you on a regular basis when the opportunity arises. And one of the conversations we used to have as well is that we would partner with people. We changed it over time, but we would partner with somebody that had money. We would go find the deal. We would do the fix up. They would pay all the costs and we would split the profit. And that worked out well for a while. And then we changed our tune. So that's also another opportunity, is talking to somebody that's looking. Look, everybody's always looking to make money on something. Maybe
Yeah.
they don't want to be a hard money lender, but maybe they want to partner with you on something. 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
also is a financial backing.
And I think sometimes also, Steve, especially if you brand new, it's good to have some partners. If maybe if you have a full-time job and you can't really focus on this like
Mhm.
24/7, so it's good if you have more people involved. So what was some of the reasons you went away from the traditional syndication, right? And more into using these investors as private money, sort of, to say, right?
Well, we went away from the partnerships because, one, they owned the houses, and we had one client that got sued after we flipped it, and I
Mm.
never wanted to put my investors in that position again. So, it was a misunderstanding from the buyer. There was a foundation issue on it that we really didn't know about. So we ended up going back and settling it and clearing it all up, no problem. But I never wanted to put the investors in that position again. And we started to have more liquidity that we could carry the monthly interest payments on multiple properties, to where when we were partnering with them, we didn't have any carrying costs, right? So we were literally making money out of thin air. We would go find the deal. They would put the money on it. They would buy it. They would pay all the repairs. So we weren't having any money out of it. And
Hmm.
then we create, a 40, 50, $60,000 profit, and we would split that with the investor. And then we'd move on to the next thing. Well, some of them started to get thin. And so we went back to saying, well, hey, what if we just did an interest only payment, and you loan the money, we take out the liability, and you're getting an 8% guaranteed rate of return going across the board. And that was really good for them. And so that's kind of where we settled in a lot of cases.
Hmm. So it sounds like that it was more profitable for you as well. And as you scale, you had more
Hmm.
units and more opportunities. You didn't need to partner with people anymore, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
that makes sense.
And some of the conversations too, in appointments, interesting story recently. I sold a house that was on the corner. The house next door, the people owned for like 40 years. They owned it free
Mm.
and clear. I bought it from them for $800,000. They carried a $500,000 note for me for a year at 7%. Well, when I sold that house and they got their money, I didn't just say, great, you guys got your money. I called them and I said, hey, what's the plan for your $500,000? Well, we really don't have one. I'm like, well, I've got a couple opportunities in Phoenix that I'd like to refinance out of some hard money that I have. Would you like to put it to work there for a couple of years?
Mm.
I gave them 3 different houses to choose from. They refinanced one of them at actually a better rate than what market is right now for 3 years. So I showed them that we could put their capital to work. It helped me, it helped them. And it's kind of crazy. Like, I bought their house, they helped me out with a loan on it, and then I got them to reloan me the money again on another property.
I love that. This is so good. It was still your money though, right? Just switch the
No, it's
hands
not
with
my.
it.
Yeah, just change hands, change properties.
Yeah, that is so good. And I mean, I know you do sell about 100 homes a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious, out of the 100, how many of them you turn into being investors?
Um, so I have a theory. My first time home buyers are always turned into first time investors. They're buying it owner occupied, and I'm walking them down the road of buying this property as an investment property, which changes our parameters, right? So the same buy box that I've developed here, I give that buy box to my first time home buyers. I'm like, this is what we're going to do. This is the road we're going to go down. So I would say probably about 30 of those sales will be investor sales, but I also include those as my first time home buyers and things like that. And then probably 20 to 30 buyers will be on the traditional side.
Hmm.
And then we'll have about 50 listings that sell, and probably about 20 to 25% of those 50 listings are my own personal flips or resales.
Nice, nice. So this is so good. And I mean, it's so true that most of the agents, right, after the sell, they don't really think about, okay, what is going to do now with the money? Okay, I sold this property, but is he going to be buying something? Is he going to be
Mm-hmm.
reinvesting the money, or is just going to put it in his checking account and live out of it, till
Right.
he runs out eventually, right?
Right.
So I love
Yeah.
how you
That's
think
a,
you're really outside the box.
yeah, it's outside the box, and it's a strategy. So why not have the conversation? And we should, it took me a while to get over this, right? No matter where you're at in your financial journey, learning to ask the question and being okay with the response, because you're not asking somebody for money. You're providing them a business opportunity. And you're also providing them a business opportunity that structures a win-win between you and that client. And that's where the magic is, right? And then as you have more of those conversations, maybe they connect you with somebody else that does have the money. Maybe they have a relative that has some money that really needs to put it to work, and they go, well, we need this for this, but maybe my mom has some money that we could do a better. And that's where the conversations start to trickle in, because you're not fearing the conversation, right? This isn't asking your mom and dad for $20 to go to the movie and being nervous about it. This is truly providing a business opportunity to create a win-win for everybody. And that's the important part of it.
Mhm. Now, I just want to go back because we know that the financial education for agents, you can make a lot of money selling real estate, but we know
Mm-hmm.
it's not about how much you make, but it's about how much you retain and how much you reinvest for it to
Correct.
really grow, right? So, what would
Yep.
be some of the tips for a lot of agents? Like, what would you suggest them to do so they can actually start saving some money and having something to invest as well?
Well, there's a couple of different things, right? Saving money. The best book out there to give somebody a idea is called Profit First, and he breaks down percentages. And so if you manage your money in percentages, it's really easy to do, because it's split up the same way every time, no matter the amount of the
Hmm.
check, right? I always advise people to, with their commissions, here's a really important phrase: a dripping faucet will fill a bucket. something that I say in all my speaking engagements, because those small drips that you make on a regular basis or contribution, it will fill that bucket up over time. And sometimes you can turn the faucet on a little bit more as you get a little bit more comfortable. But if you won't save $10 out of 100, you won't save 100 out of 1,000, you won't save 1,000 out of 10,000, you keep going because you're not creating the financial habit, right? So it amazes me, we get into this business and we're selling somebody the most expensive asset that they will ever buy, but yet financially our industry is illiterate. Yeah. When it truly comes down to understanding how money works, moves, and breathes. And so, one of the great books, it's a really long listen to, but Tony Robbins' book, The Money Changer, I think is what it's called.
Money Mastery.
Let me get that. Money Mastery, yep. Starting to learn about finances, starting to learn what kind of returns are out there, and being really good at understanding how real estate investing works, like just knowing the numbers, which takes practice. Right? If you take a property, you're like, this looks like a really good rental property. Well, do you know what it would rent for? Do you know how much work needs to be put into it? So that you start to understand, will this cash flow? Will it not cash flow? Am I buying equity? What's the opportunity here? Because eventually your business, if you go from, it's like one of the courses I created called Agent to Investor, is because we can always do traditional real estate. I believe it's really important to understand and get really good at traditional real estate in the first couple of years. And then you start transitioning into the investment side of things. And while you're doing the traditional, let's learn about some money, right? Let's learn how things work. Let's learn how, hard money, interest loans, all these pieces. So then we start shifting to the investment side and understanding how to solve problems for people. And you can always take a problem and turn it back into a traditional listing or buyer or whatever that looks like. But the traditional agent can't always do the investment side. And by the way, when you understand the investment side, there's no market you can't make money in. Because look, if we look at the cycle over the last, you've been in 19 years, I've been in it 23. The cycle in 2008, I didn't have the mindset or the opportunity to take advantage of that market. My life would look a lot different right now if I knew how to raise money back in 2008 and buy $20,000 homes in Phoenix, right? Because we were like the mecca of foreclosures. And, the people that I knew that were buying that stuff, they made so much money and created so much wealth and so much cash flow. I was so focused on trying to get out of debt that I missed the greatest opportunity in my industry at the time. So I told myself I would never miss that again. But the more I dug into it, the more I realized, guess what? There's always going to be a seller that has a problem. There's always going to be a motivated seller out there that needs to sell something quickly. There's always going to be an opportunity to create that win-win with your listing appointments, your buyers, whatever the case may be. And you continue to evolve in that mindset. And the more you do it, the best part of it is now that your business can also be multifaceted, right? So I spend a lot of time training investors and bringing them deals. I spend a lot of time on my own stuff. And then we also spend our time on the traditional side of things. And so that's where the business becomes very, very impactful, when you're not just trying to figure out where the next buyer seller lead is coming from. Yeah. Because now you can go create it. You can go back to all of your first-time home buyers that bought in 2020 and got a really cheap rate, and they've got a really cheap mortgage. You go, hey, you know what? The market's really good right now. The interest rates aren't great, but I think we can buy a great deal. Let's keep that house as a rental and let's go buy another one. That's a simple conversation to do today, but guess what? You need to know what a good rental property is next, and you need to know what their house would rent for. But you could create 5 or 6 sales a year just by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Steve, how many deals do you look at, like, per week or per month?
Oh, I probably look at 20 to 30 deals a month.
Wow. And how many do you actually pull the trigger on and summon an offer?
probably about 15% of them,
Wow.
maybe 20% of them.
So about 5 to 6. And how
Yep.
many do you guys get?
We'll buy 3 to 5 of those.
I see. Okay. So most of it. And what are some of the criteria for you when you're looking for a property?
If it makes money, it makes sense. That's it. No, it's actually, we've evolved over the years into what's possible afterwards. And this is one of the things that we learned is that, you know, I have this spreadsheet that I utilize, and it's called Know Your Numbers, right? Which I teach
Hmm.
agents how to plug in the numbers, because you might buy something at 50 cents on the dollar. And by the time you hold it for 6 months, you put a bunch of money into it. What is the actual profit? Versus, okay, I bought it. It's a really good deal. Is there somebody else out there that wants to take this project on? And can I make the same amount of money in less time and move on? So we have this theory where when we buy something, I have to have a full bid from my wife's construction company before anybody swings a hammer, because we've uncovered stuff during the process that blows the budget. We make less money on
Hmm.
it. So I want a full bid so we know our numbers. We a lot of times will try to just sell the house as is to other investors or other flippers, and we make a quick profit and we move on. Or if the bid comes back in, we may decide to renovate that, refinance it, and keep it as a rental if it fits in our buy box. Or, Wendy will, like, we have one right now that, we bought for 210,000, and she was going to have to put about 200,000 into this, and our net profit at the end, not guaranteed, would be about 100,000. Well, I found another person that's an investor that's going to actually turn this into more of a VRBO and do some things to
Hmm.
it. Well, we owned it for 7 days and we sold it for 330,000. So we netted 120,000 in 7 days without doing anything.
Yeah.
It's knowing what direction to go. And sometimes we have to backpedal a little bit, but I might buy something and make 5,000 on it. Sometimes we buy it and we make 6 figures on it. It's just knowing what to do with it and how to close on it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so, for those of you joining in right now to the Real Talk with JT, we got Steve Valentine from Phoenix, Arizona. This guy, he's an absolute animal. He sells 100 homes a year, plus he buys 50 investment property this year. That's right. So, Steve, so I know you said 50 homes. You have the criteria. I would like to go back. I know there was a question actually by Monica. Thank you,
Yeah.
Monica, for asking the question. I appreciate you. So, how do you usually structure your partnerships when you used to do them in the past?
Um, Partnerships we structured, we had a 3-page Word document that lined everything out. And I want to clear something up here too on this agreement. When we started to do it, we split the profit 50-50, right? But what I started realizing was, well, it really isn't 50-50, because I'm selling the house and doing another job. We're also managing the construction. And so I went back into this Word document. I'm like, okay, me and Monica are going to partner here. Monica has all the money, and I'm going to find the deal. Well, I started to make sure that I got paid to find the deal. So there was always a $5,000 to $10,000 fee that I got to get paid.
Hmm.
When we first found the deal. I also made sure that I was getting paid commissions to sell the property. So I wasn't doing all that for free, because basically I just bought a job. So that was a way to increase, our income for the jobs that we were doing. And then the investor and I would split, because I was a partner with the investor. I wasn't the realtor or the acquisition person. So that's how we structured those. So the Word document was just very clear. It stated in there that they owned the home. They would finance everything, including the repairs, and we would be responsible for selling it. And then at the end of it, we would split the profits on it. And so we didn't do partnerships. And this may be what you're asking, Monica, is that I didn't have an LLC with these people. I didn't put myself on LLCs with them. There's too much tax and weird stuff that has to be accounted for when you do that. So we just had an agreement with the investor on how that would work and what it looked like. So we had that operating agreement.
Now, with that said, Steve, are you looking into a trust or possibly
I
a fund to open up like a
I have
real estate fund?
thought about it. It gets a little complicated, but it is something that we're looking into potentially creating a real estate fund. I'm a partner in one real estate fund right now where we're managing some of their projects that I'll have an equity piece in, but we haven't done it ourselves yet.
Okay. And Monica, she has a follow-up question to her question. Did you hire an attorney to actually put the agreement together, or did you write it up yourself on a piece of paper?
Because the partners we were doing with this, we had personal relationships with, I never went to an attorney and had it structured, nor did they. It was more of a handshake and just written instructions to make sure we stayed on the same page. And again, these were all personal relationships that I've had with older investors that enjoyed working with us and enjoyed seeing the transformation on stuff. So I wasn't going out and doing Facebook ads to try to find investor partners because here's probably the greatest reason why, Monica. If I could teach somebody how to invest and teach them how to invest in me or with me, I didn't have to break some of the investor habits of other people because, they want a 40% rate of return on their money and they have all these expectations rather than with I call little old ladies and little old men, right? Hey, you have money sitting here. It's not working. Let me help you put it to work and we both win. And those were the relationships I wanted to do those with.
That's it. So again, putting the people first, really building those relationships, and then the relationships eventually, they will take care of you. Now, Steve, what were some of the pitfalls? Like, what
Yeah.
were some of the lessons you have learned? And give me the top three. The
Yeah.
ones which for a fact, the agents they're gonna be probably coming into contact with.
Oh, the top three. Always know your numbers and do them multiple times. And the way you know your numbers is by practicing. You can't become a skilled investor without practicing. In fact, I have a tattoo on my arm after reading The Morning Equation by Hal Elrod. It's his follow up to The Miracle Morning. And it's unwavering faith, extraordinary effort, no matter the results. Okay. The reason that is so important to me is that you are going to constantly practice your numbers and there's going to be poor results until you get really good at it. And you only get good at it by being consistent doing it, right? So as an agent, let's say you're only working with a couple of buyers and you're like, "God, what do I do today?" How about you become your own client and you schedule an appointment with you and you find a couple of fix and flip deals in your MLS or wholesale deals, and you go look at them. You run the numbers on them. You're like, what would this cost me? What's the bid? Right? The more educated you become, the easier it is to see opportunities. So that's number one. You got to know your numbers. Construction is a pain in the rear end, and it's very important. Two, having a plan before you start this to understand that flipping homes is an income generator, but it's also a tax consequence. And owning rentals is really where wealth and financial freedom is going to be created in your career. So when we started, we were like, oh, we're flipping everything. And then I realized really quickly, I need to hold some of these. So we started going back, going, okay, we're going to keep one a quarter. And then it was two a quarter. And then I'm like, I don't really want to get rid of this. So we started figuring that out. The third most important thing to understand is that no matter who your client is, how much you trust them, how good of friends they are, everything should be documented, put in writing, and kept very clean. And here's why I say that. I trusted a client this past year, and when the market was crazy, we bought them a house. They were completely qualified. We paid cash for it. They were supposed to refinance out of it. They were completely qualified. And when the media got a hold of them that the market's going to crash and all these things and interest rates went up, they bailed on the house and they left me stuck with it. And I did not get enough retainer from them to cover. And we lost a couple $100,000 on that deal. And, we had to go through mediation and attorneys, and it still never ended up well. So make sure that you are really documenting going through these things, and it's a trust and verify and document with everybody, no matter how close they are, and including your investors, really important.
I love
I guess I'm
that.
going to add one more thing here.
Good.
Trust your instincts and really start to get into financial knowledge with how things work and what it would look like to own real estate. I like to play this game with my students where I give them $300,000 of monopoly money. And I said, okay, you just inherited $300,000. What do you do with it? Where do you invest it? Because that could happen, right? So how do you strategize around it? So you can play with monopoly money and go, well, if I had this much money, this is what I would do with it. And you start feeling what it feels like to have that money and that financial wherewithal so that you can start putting it to work. Because I do believe that as real estate agents, we start to increase our income. And it's not just real estate agents. It's I live in the influencer space as well. And as our income increases, our lifestyle increases, our expenses increase. Rather than, okay, our income is increasing, where do I need to start putting money into assets? Right? And so the more money you put into assets, the more financially better off you are going to be. And so before, like at the beginning of this, JT talked about the car collection and things that we have.
Yeah.
We forego all of that 10 years ago to invest in real estate. We'd make money. We'd put more money into real estate. We'd look for another deal. We would continue to do it. And we still live in the same house that we bought in 2012. Yeah, it's been remodeled, but we just kept investing back into the asset class. And now the asset class is doing things like paying for show trucks. It pays for our second home. It does all of that. But you got to do some of that early on before you start increasing your lifestyle. Let your lifestyle increase as your assets increase.
Yeah. So good. So good. I mean, they say the poor people they spend their money on liabilities, and the rich people they spend their money on assets.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the biggest difference, I think. So know your numbers, have an end game in mind, before you even invest, right? Like knowing what's going to happen at the end, a clarity in your partnerships, right? Because the more clear you're going to be, the more likely the partnership is going to work at the end. Trust in your gut. I think that's huge. Like if it's telling you, hey, it's not a good deal, it's probably not a good deal. You shouldn't touch it.
Yep.
And have the financial knowledge, really, like being financially savvy. So good. So Monica, actually, she has another question. Thank you, Monica, for asking all these questions. I love that. And Monica, she's an investor herself, so good stuff. What are the top three things you learn as a landlord, and also top three things you learn doing bird deals
Okay.
and flips?
Number one on the landlord thing, I will be the landlord. I will never manage my own properties. So as a licensed agent, I lose track because we move things around, somewhere between 80 and 98 single family homes. Now, with that, I don't want to manage 80 or 90 homes. Could I hire an employee? Yes. Do I increase my liability as owner agent and the employee with a fair housing violation, or, because all of our states, a lot of them are very tenant friendly and very landlord abrasive, and tenants are the first ones to play victim, right? 100%. So my mom owns the property management company. It was the one thing she kept when my dad passed away. So they manage about 500 homes here in Phoenix. I pay them. They manage my properties. It is out of sight, out of mind. I get
That's it.
reports on it. So it's really important to find a good property manager
Mm-hmm.
that will take care of your properties and understand that, your assets are tenants and houses. So the tenants, the longer they stay, the more of an asset they are. So that's something I'm very firm on with the management company is like, I want my tenants to be here 5 to 7 years. How do we do that? Well, you have to be a good property management company. You have to take care of properties and you have to take care of people, right? Because if you really look at a tenant is kind of a partner. They are paying into your retirement every month and they're living in your home. So
And
those
I
are the
think,
big things.
and I think
Yeah,
also it's Steve. If I can jump in, it's really respect towards the tenant too, right? I see
100%.
many times where the landlords they almost look down on the tenant, like, no, you got to pay me
Mhm.
the rent or you out. Where in reality, we're really talking about their home. This is where
Yep.
they raising families and stuff like that.
Yep.
So keep going.
Yeah. On the Burr deals, yes, I love this. I could talk about this for hours. So the three things that I learned, right, which was really important. One, depending on where you're at, but I think I advise it anywhere, right, is I learned what was going to be the best performing asset as a rental. So I'll just give you a quick idea so that maybe you can base your model off it. I looked at a geographical area based on the property management company's recommendations that these are the areas that rent the highest and the tenants stay the longest. Now, those are older homes. What I love about older homes, if you think about this in flip or the Burr strategy, what's the worst part about flipping a home? You put a new sewer in it, new kitchens, new bathrooms, new roof, new AC, and you make 20 grand and somebody gets to enjoy all that work for the next umpteen years. Well, why not keep that as a rental? It's all new. You're not going to have the problems. So when we get into something that's a heavy renovation, we tend to keep that if it fits our buy box. So here's my buy box. I like older homes that are less than 2,000 square feet. They have a single AC unit or furnace. There's no pool and typically no homeowner association, right? The reason those are important, a pool is a huge liability, both in finance and with tenants. And then second, single AC unit, right? I don't want a larger home with two AC units because it's one more thing to break that I have to pay for. The smaller homes in certain areas, people get settled, they don't move, and they stay long term. These investors that come to us and they're like, hey, I want to buy a 5,000 square foot house that's brand new, that's got four AC units and a pool. I guarantee you my assets outperform those assets 100% of the time because the bigger homes are transitional homes. Nobody wants to paint 5,000 square feet every time somebody moves out. Nobody wants to replace 5,000 square feet of flooring, right? So the bigger ticket homes, the people stay a lot shorter time and they're constantly turning over. So you have leasing fees, repair fees, all those things to where my little tiny Cracker Jack boxes, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 4 bedroom, 2 bath, they're just constantly stayed in and people don't like to move. And we take really good care of our rental properties too. So, if we're having AC problems, it's the end of its life, we're replacing it because you're going to have to anyway. But those are my criterias. And on the flips, every time we buy a house, before we swing a hammer or do anything to it, we scope the sewer system, we do a roof inspection, and we do an HVAC inspection as well. The reason being is that those are your three biggest ticket items that can go wrong that you may not have budgeted for. And you look at them from a standpoint like, if you're flipping it, is this going to be an issue when we sell the home? Is somebody come back and gripe about it? The sewer is the number one thing that people miss. And here's what I mean by that. We go through and think about, you buy a vacant house, right? And it's sat there for 6 months. And yes, the water's going down the toilet, but the first time something solid goes down, the sewer backs up. Well, what we've come to find out is in homes older than 1980, there's a lot of called the clay piping, cast iron piping, and Orangeburg sewer piping. Well, those collapse underneath its foundation. So now you've gone through and you've put $50,000 into a property, and now you've got a problem with the sewer line that all this stuff has to come back up. So, we might buy things as is, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to inspect them to see how they're gonna plan out. Because if that's a problem, it doesn't meet my budget, I could sell the house as is and get out of it and not make any money. Obviously, I'm going to disclose those things, but at least we know ahead of time of what we're dealing with before we start getting into it.
Wow. I can't believe, Steve, it's 3 o'clock already.
Jeez, already?
Yeah, we went through it like crazy. I mean, we probably can spend another couple of hours over here easily just talking about investments, you know. So
100%.
so good. I mean, look, before I let you go, anything else you would like to, share with the viewers?
A couple things. I invested a lot of time and money in writing this book, and it is a roadmap of all the crazy I have done, and I bust all the myths in there. Um, and very excited to have it come out on June 13th. So I'd love everybody to buy the book and get into it, dive into it. Follow me on Instagram. A lot of great education there with what I do. My new podcast will be released next week. It's called The Real Estate Revolution. And so the cool thing about this podcast is, like Monica being in here, is I'm interviewing regular, ordinary people and agents when they have some sort of situation they want to cut up or they want to go through. So, from VRBOs to investment properties, how to structure things. So it's real tangible information every episode. And it's been a lot of fun giving people a platform to ask me questions and then talk about it and get it done.
So good.
Those are the big things that I have going on. And again, I appreciate you having me on, JT.
Yeah, I love it. So, Steve, it was so good to see you. Guys, if you like this, give us some thumbs up, share it with some people, and don't forget to buy the book from Steve and follow him on Instagram. Catch you on the next one. Peace out.
Thanks, JT.